Every single problem that you have in your real estate business with your clients is due to your inability to set and manage expectations with your clients. What do you think that means there?
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
This is true at every level, both on the listing side for our senior agents, both on the buyer team, both on the general brokerage team. It happened on all sides, and it all comes down to our inability. And this could be like, this is a skill set right here. Are you guys with me on this? This is I want to say, it's like an art that you build in doing this and understanding this business. Is that I got to get really, 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 really good at not only understanding expectations, but how do I articulate my things in a way that I can set and I also manage expectations in the entire process. Okay, so the most important part for this, I'm going to talk about this today because this is true. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples of what we dealt with. But it's not the crazy client. The client's not crazy. What is it? You didn't set the expectation at all in any way. And so they're running rampant because you're not doing your job on the expectation standpoint, period. And sometimes that comes from fear of collision. Sometimes that has to do with lack of skill set, not understanding what they need to do. And it just has to do with really a lack of awareness of how important this is in this business. And this is by far the most important thing that you can do in this business because it's a very emotional buy or sell, right? It's the most emotional purchase or sale that anybody makes. And it has a very long sales cycle. And so there's lots of ups and downs and opportunities for them to do what? Turn on you, right? And every single complaint I get, when I hear it, what do I think? This is pretty stupid that you're even thinking this, but the problem is I can't overcome it at that point because it's too late in the game. You guys with me on this? And so once their mind is switched and flipped, the switch is flipped, guess what? I can't fix it. I can't change it. They have one solution, which is what? They were out the agreement, out the agreement, out the agreement, out the agreement. And there's no true justification. So at that point, it's either us, do we just hold the line, or do we, because in many cases, you did exactly what you're supposed to do. And so it comes down to their ability, right, to be understood and for you to make sure you set expectations. So what's the most important by far is to set it, which is also called preframe. So when we talk about that, some of you guys have been here for a while. We talked about this before. But the first part when we talk about, look at that, is what is a preframe? So I want you guys to take this. What a preframe is a box that I set with words that's around their thoughts. I have to set a boundary with words around their thoughts. And what that means is they can bounce around anywhere in that box, but I have to be good at setting boundaries of where their mind can go and what can happen. And here's the secret. The tighter that box is, aka the better I am at setting that box, the less that happens and the less chaos that I have in my life and my business. I'll say it again. The tighter I am and the better I am at setting a tighter box in terms of their thoughts, right, around what can possibly happen, the more control they are and the less chaos I have in my business. And so what happens if I set a box, they can bounce around anywhere in here, but they don't actually go outside the box. And outside the box is at the point where they turn on you. They think that it's your marketing. It's not actually the price of their property, right? They think that you're doing your job and what's going on. All while they're also talking to other people and having people talk to them, influence them outside of you. Many of you guys are missing that part as a part of the preframe, okay? And so this is why we need to have hyper awareness, which I'll talk about, on where are you losing them at and where are people getting mad at you at and what's happening. And then I'm able to go back and do that. And so, yes, when we talk about some of those here, the second part of that is my preframe, is I got to talk to them, like I said, is what to expect. And that's obviously a very vague answer, but it needs to be very detailed. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how things are. It's obviously going to depend on the buy side or on the sell side, but we're missing this a lot. And just small stuff. Small things. Like one example we had last week was a buyer who wanted to get out of their agreement because the buyer's agent wasn't available to show a property and they had to have someone else show it to them. And so at that point, they got mad and wanted out the agreement because the agent wasn't available. Now, what does that come down to? It's a very bad pre-frame.
Well, no pre-frame.
If I did it right when I explained the team model in my presentation, I would say, you know what's so great about what we have here and what we do is that I'm a very, very good agent. And a lot of times I'm showing properties and doing things. The coolest part about our team here is that if I'm not available and I have somewhere else, I would have one of my business partners who's a true certified real estate expert. They can show you properties immediately. So guess what happens? You never miss out on the right property when it comes through, and you're always going to have someone available versus you're working with, Mary Jane over at ABC Realty, and she's out of town on vacation. Guess what happens to that property you like? You lost it, and she can't find anybody else to do it. You wouldn't believe how many people call us wanting us to show the client property because no one else in the office will show it to them. Why is that? Because they don't actually work as a true team. And so if I set that pre-frame and expectations so that when that does happen, guess what they think? This is awesome. This did happen. Versus, I want out because this agent's not helped me and they're not available for me. Right? And so these are small things that are nuances where you got to understand, here's why every single part of that presentation matters and why all that shit's built into that presentation for you. Does that make sense? And so I have to be good at talking about this, about what to expect and what can happen. And I want to talk ahead of time about any potential pitfalls that really happen. So for most of it, it comes into where the communication is between you and the buyer, you and the seller, right? It comes into where you start to make the offer. Then all of a sudden, what's the next one people break down on, you think? I get this one a lot too. I went out the agreement because so-and-so is not working for me, they're working for the seller, even though they're a buyer's agent. So what does that mean?
They don't understand.
I'm really weak at pre-framing my people on what the reality of the market is and why I'm telling them the truth versus telling them what they want to hear. Right? And I get that a lot, right? Once a week almost. And so what that means is from the communication standpoint, they're not pre-framed and their thoughts aren't being controlled. They're just wild west in their terms of their thoughts. Are you guys with me on this? And so you want to be very good at being hyper aware of where's the breakdowns happening and where are you losing your clients at. Because for everyone that calls in here to complain, there's 5 or 6 of yours that just disappeared. You didn't hear from them again. They just ghosted you. They told you they're not buying. And all of a sudden they're bought with somebody else, listed with somebody else. You guys with me on that? Very important piece here. Second one is I want to teach them how to think. How do I do that? When this happens, this is what I want you to do. When you start feeling this way, I want you guys to do this. I want you to understand it's normal for you to have buyer's remorse when you make the offer, and all of a sudden you go home and wonder if this is the right decision. You're going to know you made the right decision because we both know the market. You've been watching these properties for months. You know this is the one you guys love. So just know when you go home, I don't want you guys to have buyer's remorse, and we want to make sure we get this to the finish line no matter what. Would you guys agree? Yes. It's very important that I'm constantly having these conversations at a high level. Most agents are just order takers. They just end up not doing these type of things, and it really makes a big, big difference. You guys with me on this? Fourth one here is how to react. So when this happens, I want you guys to feel this way and understand this, right? If you start feeling this way, if an agent talks, you've talked to another agent, here's what I want you to do. Last thing I want you guys to do is be on another website getting information from somebody else that's inaccurate, who's not representing you. And so you got to start getting, some of y'all will sell houses here where you never even set them into Boomtown before. So I'm like, how is that possible? Well, what does that mean? Well, they're searching houses on Zillow, right? So for every one that you put on Zillow, you're losing some to somebody else because what do? They go to the most convenient. That's like me looking for properties, me looking for something on Amazon. I can click the one-click buy now button, but I'm actually going to go on Google and look at a different website to actually order that product. Think I'm going to do that? No, I'm just going to hit buy now. It's going to come just like they're going to hit for the agent, right? So you got to be good at teaching them, right, how to operate in terms of how they move forward. I'm going to add one more here, which is very important. What you guys really need to do is teach them how to communicate. So what happens a lot of times, they turn on you and you don't know it. And they feel awkward telling you how they feel. And so they just go talk to their agent until it bubbles up and bubbles up and bubbles up. And all of a sudden you lose them. This is true for the seller side and the buyer side. So I'm going to say, hey, look, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, Mr. and Ms. Seller, it's a very, very emotional process. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs in this process. It sometimes lasts weeks or months in terms of what we're doing here. And so I want you to know that we live by this thing here, like I mentioned earlier in my presentation. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And is that okay with you guys? Yes. Well, I want you to know you can communicate with me that same exact way. The last thing I want you guys to do is feel a certain way and not share that with me. So you guys have full permission to share with me anything, everything you're thinking, regardless of what it is. Because what I find in doing this business for a long time is that most problems, if anything, comes down to simple miscommunication. And most time that's because someone feels uncomfortable telling them the flat out truth. So you guys have full permission to tell me the full truth, and do I have full permission to tell you guys the full truth? Yes, and what does that do? Lowers that barrier, and now they feel more open to communicate with you, and they can be more open with you, versus they treat you like you're just some real estate guy or real estate girl that they can't really openly communicate with. Second thing here, which is important, is I have to be in this place here of agreement. Now, I should have mentioned earlier that, like I said a million times in the past, is I don't need the presentation that we have to sign people to agency agreements. I need that to be able to tell my clients the truth, and what that entire presentation done, if done right and not skipped all the steps, is it pre-frames them and sets their expectations for the entire process, so that in turn what it does is it lowers resistance and keeps them from backing out and trying to leave their agency agreement with me. Are you guys with me on this? Make sense? So the first thing here, which is super important for agreement, what does this mean here? I want to be in a place of agreement versus expectation. Agreement versus expectation. What does that mean, you think? Almost every single breakdown in any relationship comes down to when somebody's living in expectation, not in agreement. And what that means is one person is expecting the other person to do something, meanwhile the person on the other side doesn't know they're expected to do that thing. This is true in relationship with your spouse, it's your relationship with your friends, and it's more than anything true with your relationship with your clients. And so what that means is what we're going to have a conversation about is here's what's going to happen, and here's what I need from you, and here's what you can expect from me. And then what I do. What's the key part of that?
All agree to it.
What was that? I have to close for confirmation. So how would I do that?
Are we in agreement? Sound fair enough?
Sound fair enough? Are we in agreement with that? Does that sound perfect with you? Right? I want to make sure that we have this ability here to go through. And not only do I make sure that I set... I'm just saying, you got to be aware, like most people live their entire life, live in a place of expectation, and it's miserable. Because what happens when you live in that place? You're let down. And it's not really their fault. Whose fault is it? It's your fault because you live in a place of expectation instead of agreement. Well, yeah, because I want to make sure I'm not in a place of living the expectation and that we're in agreement. You're in agreement with what I'm going to do, I'm in agreement with what you're going to do, and we're on the same exact page. That's called what? Clear communication. But most of the time, if you look at breakdowns in any relationship, they're expecting you to do something you're not doing it, and you don't even know you're supposed to do it. Or you're expecting something from them, and that they don't do it. Meanwhile, like it's part of the loyalty thing, that your clients aren't staying loyal to you because why? You don't tell them about it. Hey, look, here's the deal. I'm working my butt off for you guys, and I will make sure I do anything and everything that it takes to get your household or get you guys in the right house. And so the one thing that's super important that I expect from you guys is your loyalty to me as your agent. Do you have any problem doing that? No, I know we talk about an agreement, but for me, it's much more than an agreement here. This relationship I'm looking to have for life. I want to be a real estate resource for life. I want to work my butt off for you and do whatever it takes. And so I just want to make sure we're on the same page. And here's the deal. I don't need you on any of those other websites. Stick to our websites, the absolute best. Get you more properties than anybody else, right? Whatever it is you got to do to get them, make sure that you have that, an agreement. And then you say, hey, sound fair enough? Great. Any questions about that? No. So we're on the same page? Yes. And so I need to make sure I close for confirmation in addition to having the conversation about what? Are we in agreement about the expectation? Every listing appointment, guess what I would do? At the end of the listing appointment, you know what I do? I'll pull my phone out and say, hey, just so you guys know how it works, communication with me, I'm always here for you. But guess what? My phone rang probably about 15, 20 times since we've been sitting here for the last 2 hours. And so obviously if I'm with you, I'm not going to disrespect you and answer my phone. And so just know that if I'm with somebody else or if I'm working and selling your property, I don't answer the phone, guess what? I'll call you back at least the same day. Maybe a couple hours, but I'll make sure I call you back at least the same day. And if not, guess what? You can always call my assistant or whatever it is at the office at that point, right, from the listing side, and you can make sure you can answer any questions in the meantime. I'm in communication with him all day, every day, and I will make sure that anything you need gets taken care of. Also, you can send me a quick text if you like, and I'll make sure I get back. But just know, if you don't hear from me for a few hours, everything's okay. I'm just back to back to back. My calendar goes from about 6 a.m. to about 8 p.m., and so I'll find somewhere in there I can get back to you. But just know I'm working my butt off harder than anybody else. Does that sound fair enough with you guys? Yes, every single time. It was part of my routine. I'll pull my phone out and I'll show them, and I have my phone. I wouldn't show my call log, but I'd say, look, I got about 10 calls since I've been sitting here. And so the reality is I want to make sure I'm present wherever I'm at, whoever I'm with. And some of that time is me actually working on selling the property. And so I want to make sure that I get back to you, but it might be a couple hours. Is that cool with you? Yes. We're in agreement in that scenario. Make sense? So it's going to be communication where the breakdown is. It's going to be for the buyer side, how they get properties, when they get properties, and also what they're getting. How many times you had a property, they send you, like, hey, why didn't you send me this property? You're like, well, dude, that's in Pawleys Island. You told me that you didn't want to go any further south than Surfside. And so you want to have that conversation about what I'm sending you. Hey, if you see something on another website, which shouldn't ever happen, because you should always be on our website here. If you see something on my website that I didn't send you, guess what that means? It's outside the criteria that you gave me. And so if that's the case, let me know. We'll adjust criteria to make sure you get whatever you need. In some cases, I may push that for you if that's okay. And so if I know that their count's only 40 properties, I may expand their geographical area and get their confirmation and say, hey, is it okay with you if I push that a little farther down to Garden City or Murrells Inlet so we can expand your search a little bit? Yes. Confirmation. Okay, so just so you know, when you get something in Murrells Inlet, don't get pissed at me because we went ahead and expanded that to make sure you don't miss out anything good. Sound good? And so you have to say the same thing to them over and over and over and over and over again for they can understand that. You just got to be good at that. Does that make sense? For us, it seems normal because we do it every day, but they don't hear it every single day. And so you just need to understand that you must go back, and I put in here, reclose multiple times. And I put in here, I want you guys to put in here, parentheses, kids. Which means you got to understand, like, I got to say it over and over and over to them, and I got to say it over to them with love. The next one I have here is it needs to be, if possible, in writing. This could be anything that you think is a major breakdown that you're going to have on the buy side. You want to write it down in your presentation, you want to circle it, and you want to show it to them. On the listing side, this is very important for you. If you have a listing, you want a full CMA, and I'll show you guys an example at the end so you guys can see what we do on the listing side. I think it's important. I want to have all the comps, all the actives, all the solds, their information, the CMA spreadsheet. For us, we use Cloud CMA. And at the very bottom, I have my suggested price in the email to myself, or a suggested price range, if I don't know the details, email to myself before I ever walk in that door. I'm showing that I can actually do the preparation. I have a way that's very, very clear in doing it, and I have something that's anchored in writing. And so let's say I come in, my number is $250,000, right? They think it's worth $280,000. And I go over and say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, right? I know you think it's worth $280,000. I'm okay to try it higher in this scenario, right? But I want you guys to understand, make it clear that I'm good, but I'm not a magician. I can make this thing happen. I might hit a grand slam out of the park. I'd hit grand slams more than anybody else in this business. But it's not likely I get up there. If I'm the best batter in MLB, I'm probably not going to hit grand slam every time. So we're going to try for the grand slam, but if it doesn't get the grand slam, guess what we got to do? Fix the price. All the data, all the numbers, all the solds all say it should be $250,000. There's not one home in your neighborhood that's sold for $280,000 that's comparable to yours. Would you agree? Yes. And as you see here, my number is $250,000. I'm willing to try it higher because I want to help you guys out, make sure you do business together, and I want to try to hit a grand slam for you. But I want you to know, in 2 weeks, when the house is not sold, guess what you cannot do? Blame me for it. Because like I told you, this is what happens. You say, oh, I'm cool with that. You forget I have this thing in writing right here at $250,000, and you all of a sudden think that we're $280,000. And so when I call you on week 2 and say, look, we're not getting the numbers we need, the traffic we need, the people showing it we need, that we need to fix the price, guess what I need you to do? Remember this conversation right here, right now, and we're going to make sure we get this corrected. But I need them to do what? To see it. It has to be in writing. So at that point, we have the try it hard and that must be done because I use all this as leverage, and I found that me showing it to them in the email wasn't enough. And what will they do? Turn on me by month 1 at the very end. What do you do to market my house? I want to have the agreement because guess what? They have cold callers who are calling them, talking about you the entire time, ruining your trust with them, trying to get the listing stolen from you. And this happens over and over, right? And so at that point, I have them sign the try higher addendum. If it's priced $10,000 above where you say it is, you want to have them sign that try higher addendum. Why? Because that's your leverage for the rest of the entire listing time. And it says in there they cannot cancel that agreement. Because I want to make sure that's my way of doing what? Setting their clear expectation from the beginning. And they sign their name to it, and I literally add in there, I'm not, so-and-so understands that Blake and his team are not a magician. They're good, right? So they're good, they're not a magician, whatever it is. And what it does is it allows me to set that, and I use this later on in the process to do what? Remind them. It's all about future pacing here. Okay, future pacing means what? I'm setting the groundwork, I'm laying the groundwork verbally for what's going to happen in the future. I'm playing chess moves that are 3-4 moves ahead of time. Most of you guys are just not understanding it. It's not to keep them in agreement, it's to get them to understand, hey, look, this is what I said, and we were in agreement with this, and I'm just reminding you on this.